says you're live. I just automatically say it out loud. I also think I didn't decide on a microphone today, and I meant to. So, it's an experiment. This whole thing is really an experiment for me because I find I work best, or I'm getting distracted. See, in best tech fashion, we have, well, I don't know, I find there's many types of tech people. There's the very organized, and I'm very organized, but I also sometimes have a million windows open. And there's those who don't. So, let me close them and get undistracted here. There's a reason I had a million windows open. There's a reason for all of this. So ultimately, I am working through what I keep calling my portfolio scaries. And I'm a poet, I'm a writer, I am a lot of different things. And, you know, sometimes what keeps me sane, and what also, you know, honestly, what's always kept me sane, here, stop moving things, Megan, is that I played with words. I've always played with words for a very, very long time, and I have a long history and reason for that, and history with it. And I think it's my history with that really led me down the line of work I'm in today. And I never expected to be doing it quite as much dev-oriented work as I do these days and what I'm doing right now. And I'm not a dev. But in, industry framing, I do fall into that full stack UX dev title and a couple other different titles. And it's interesting because in UX, it's an intersectional area. And I say all of this, and the reason for even this video and my ideas here and things I'm working through in terms of trying to get my process out there. Because portfolio scaries are scary because how on earth, you know, when you're a creative thinker, do you really start to denote all of the things that you do think through to get to your final decisions? And it's incredibly difficult to capture in a portfolio, at least in my opinion. I'm certain many people can probably relate to that. So anyway, right now I am in the process of trying to get something off the ground and do it without overthinking, meaning like, what's the purpose of a portfolio? Why am I doing this right now? You know, and obviously it's career oriented, and, you know, I'm not necessarily in the process of making a job move, but man, 20 years of human-centered design work, you know, and moving in a lot of different directions and really honing in onto what I want to do for, you know, like the type of work I want to do in the next 10 to 15 years at least, or longer. You know, I'm like, everything I've done has led toward that, and now I want to capture it, and that has felt difficult. You know, I'm not trying to capture product design work that I've done, interaction design work that I've done. I'm trying to capture, you know, the way that I think about UX and what it actually means and how it actually affects, you know, organizations and their software. Not software first, not UI first. It's the organization first to me. Because without the organization, there is no software and there's no people that work there. There's nobody affected. So yeah, the user is the end goal and they're always in my mind, but you can't have a user without an organization and without people at an organization. And why that matters is because inside of an organization, there is a structure and a system in itself. And that ultimately comes down to the behavior of the organization and the systems within the organization that allow successful behavior to happen. And when we start talking about behavior and we start talking about the, foundations of, the ins and outs of an organization, we have to name it. We have to say, this thing is happening. This is a process that will, either aid us or, cause us to go off rails. When we reflect on ourselves, it's really not that different of a process, I don't think, when we do something, right or wrong, right? Our parents or our authority figures as children, or as a teenager, or even as an adult, teach us like, oh, nope, you need to correct this process. Otherwise, you're going to set yourself up to fail in these ways. That's a system. That's an internal system. We have internal systems. One of my favorite things ever, and I didn't necessarily plan to grab this, it took me forever to find this emotion wheel, and I love it as an example because this in itself is a system. It's our internal system. And when you look at it, we don't need to go through all of the different topics. I really want to use it because it's all about information architecture. Words aside, everything comes down to these top nodes. That's our internal system. Systems in an environment with another system affects another system, and so on and so forth. It makes me think of, what's that movie called? With Leonardo DiCaprio, like Interception or something like that. Or it makes me think of, mirrors and mirrors and mirrors and mirrors, like when you see those images, because truly once you get one internal working system, somewhere else there's going to be reflections and reflections on reflections. And because we all have our own internal working systems, we have our own perceptions, right, of those reflections, and things can become messy really fast. And I see that same exact pattern, honestly, happening everywhere in all sorts of, industries, if you will, or interactions that we have in everyday lives with our, personal life, our relationships, with our work, with our, with our pets, with our animals. I was going on an internal UX rant about, the usability of having a pet. Cat hair, spring. Anyway, what does all of this mean? How does this tie to what I'm talking about, and how does this tie to systems and software and working on a portfolio? Because I am trying to curate content. I'm trying to organize it. I'm trying to name it. I'm trying to frame it in a way that makes me feel like I'm doing, my story justice and what I, think about justice, right? But when you scale even that idea out, what does it mean? Well, the way that we talk about things and name things, that really is framing, right? And that affects the usability of it, how it is internalized, how it's, right, taken in by whoever it's affecting, how it's perceived, and how it creates a ripple effect. And that ripple effect is, going to lead to hundreds of different paths, if you will. We can get right into the quantum field, right, and quantum realities, because it is, in essence, that type of idea. And in terms of naming and curating and all of that, it directly relates to interaction design. It directly relates to UI and software. It directly relates to library sciences, the fundamentals and baseline of where, UX really even started, is thinking about and curating or information in a way and organizing it in a way that can be consumable so that it can be used. And when we're talking about code and when we're talking about naming and softwares and organizations, well, the way that the processes are laid out, those affect who can take them in and work them properly, right? That's why we want to get good people in there that know what they're doing, right? Industry experts, etc. When we get into code and get into setting up code, you want good architecture, right? You need a good infrastructure. You need to make sure that, what I call, like when you break it down simply, that the back end of the back end can talk to this back end, that we can get to the server side, that we can get to the UI, that everything can talk together. And now more than ever, it's super important to think about naming, which to a designer sometimes can be a little bit cumbersome. But it's going to start to really bleed in quickly. It already is because of AI. AI can't work. AI is not magic. AI is not a magic wand. AI relies on good information architecture and good infrastructure in order to automate itself around and get answers for people. When we are dealing with like tax software, money, that's going to become extremely important because the people consuming that software, they need accurate numbers and naming. And to be honest with you, I see a bad pattern, a malicious pattern arising in the industry because of the way that business works. And I see big tech selling a lot of software and selling a lot of big ideas that I can assure you are not attainable, especially, and it's especially concerning considering that we're talking about millions and billions of dollars. But out there, you can't just sell AI as a magic wand. It is an idea, and it has to be built on proper infrastructure. And without that, your product is set up to fail, your investors are set up to fail, and the people using your product is set up to fail. There's a reason why sketchy things feel sketchy. It's because there's something underlying that probably isn't connecting yet. So anyway, naming in itself is increasingly important. I would say, consume AI with a skillful eye, especially if you work in the tech industry. Watch out for everything. Go work for companies that you can assure yourself are set up for success based on what their architecture is doing. If you're a product designer, if you only care about making even maybe more like consumer-facing UI, beautiful interactions, that's amazing and I love it. When you go and interview, ask about their process, ask about their code, ask about what their release process is like, and iterating through projects, because not only are you wanting to learn now, you want to set yourself up for longevity, and hopefully you want to set yourself up with organizations that want to do good in the world and can back up what they're selling. I know morality is subjective, but we can assume that if we are baking something and we want somebody to consume it, we hope it's good for them and it's not going to, poison them in the long run. So naming. Why am I thinking about it? Well, I am a design systems architect, and I never even meant to be this. It was because every single time, and I love working for enterprise, and it's not cut any of that, but when you work in enterprise, there's a really big lack of design system, and there's probably a broken infrastructure somewhere. Delivering, sexy UI has never been a priority in that realm, and that's fine. That's not what they're selling. They're selling really, really smart pieces of math, really smart computers, smart products. But it is becoming more of a demand, and that's how I kind of landed here is, I already was at this intersection with, about my background in graphic design and then product and then HCI. And so I have this expectation actually going into working for, more UI-oriented companies or people who wanted UX designers, that things would be working in a specific way. And when they weren't, I, just kept wondering why. I have to know why, because I can't deliver anything for you if I don't know how the thing works. And if I don't have enough resources, that's okay. I just got to know why these decisions were made, or, where these things are, so that I can backtrack my way, work my way around the existing system, deliver a product, audit what's going on, maybe make a recommendation, depending on what, what the story is that week, or for that release. So anyway, as I've been working through my portfolio, I again, as a very creative person, I move very quickly. I was so bored and frustrated with trying to choose, right? I just described, there's so many different things that are going on in my head. Where do you begin? And I was bored with just trying to sit down and curate everything. I was bored. And so I decided I was just going to start shipping something. And that actually became what I'm working through. And it became what I decided my portfolio is going to be, is just a living system architecture of the way I think, what I can do, and just showing all of the different realms of what I think that user experience is. And honestly, when it comes to my process, I am my process. I have to think out loud. That's what drew me to UX, was, working with people, working with ideas, working with, honestly, like, human energy and thinking, and the things that we do say and the things that we don't say. And as we become more virtual, that's great, but we need to still support the things that we're working before. Otherwise, we're going to lose some of that essence. And then, these advancements that we make, they're not going to be as beneficial for us, because, we're losing some of that foundation that we had before. So anyway, I decided I was just going to launch something, and that is like it is just feels icky as a designer, because I'm not thinking through really what I'm going to throw in there. And I can't right now, because I can't be creative and get into a creative, like, a web flow, a design flow, until I know what architecture I'm working with. That's why it's all important. And man, you don't have to code to learn it and know what's going on, and it's just going to excel you farther and farther. So anyway, I decided I was just going to throw a movie theme together, and literally, I'm like, again, sorry, I'm like even catching, systems designer. It's so difficult for me, because I have, sets on sets of tokens, and I'm like, oh, well, I want to use style dictionary to blah, 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 blah. And it's like, what's the goal? I did a video for myself to, think through the 4 W's of what I'm even working on for my project. That's actually what's behind me right now. And I do this for a reason, actually, is because I need to come back to that end goal. And the end goal was ship something, because I think it's going to help your anxiety. I think it's going to help you feel better. I think it's going to help you create more. So anyway, I tossed together a basic framework. I, just slapped together a movie theme. The goal that evening was, let's get something live. So I put together just a really basic movie theme. I didn't even think about my colors or anything. Or really my tokens, I should say. I wasn't even doing anything modular at the time. I was like, oh, let me remember how to launch a React app, and I can't do that without something to launch it with, right? But how do I launch it if I'm going to now spend a bunch of data, right? Do you see where I was? Because, I need an MVP. I need something to work with, something to create from. It's a lot different than print design or whatever. So anyway, so for the last 5-6 days, I've been iterating through that, and I've had tons of ideas. I've set up my framework. Everything's launched. I've got DevOps, not fun. I mean, I know it is for some people, but I could do it. I make it fun, but I'll say, kudos to the people who, do that all day and every day. I like that type of work, but I also like lots of other type of work. So after a long 4 to 5 days of just thinking through what I wanted to do, buying domains and setting all this stuff up, I'm good to go. My site's been launched. I did a super basic framework, and then over the weekend, let's see, it's Tuesday. So yeah, Saturday and Sunday, I buttoned up my theme a little bit. I just was trying to decide what I wanted to do without slowing myself down too much. So basically, making myself work with things that maybe weren't tokenized, maybe things that were modified movie components or something that I wouldn't throw together in that way. But then I'm like, well, I'm used to working in enterprise. I'm used to how if I gave this away, well, I'm SOL, but I can monitor it. So it's been also a fun exercise for me, fairly, just like ship it, ship it, ship it. Doesn't need to be perfect, which I like things to be neat and buttoned up. And ultimately, I have been creating wrappers around components, creating basically my site infrastructure and basically the UX of it. And yesterday, I tightened all of that up and got a lot of other idea. Oh my gosh, my brain! I just had a huge brain fart. Got a lot of other ideas for what I want to do. So I needed a break. I decided that I'm going to now, because I'm having a good medical day, think through a lot of different types of things that came up, curate some of my process from that out loud like I like to do, and get back to coding soon. So after wrapping up a lot of my components, I'm like, I have this idea and I wish I thought of this idea before I did a bunch of this wrapping and before I pushed my last push to GitHub, because that was like my first real like site update. So in that moment, I did decide to backtrack, which was yesterday, and I'm glad I did, because everything is about naming, even when you don't think it is, even when you're like, oh my gosh, at the very least, I don't need to spend time thinking about my pushes. I can just name it this way. Yeah, I'm not a dev. But honestly, I'm not launching software. I'm just trying to get a portfolio up. But I was like, well, wouldn't it be cool if I did like live versioning? I am a software designer. I don't want to have a website. I want to make a piece of software. How about I do that? I already have plans to modularize it in all of these other ways. And so yesterday I spent some time learning something new. And what did I do? I set up basically a branch of my website that I'm going to put in, live versioning. And I spent some time learning how to like go through Vercel and grab my last pull and connect it to this and that. And even in that, I'm like, crap, why didn't I think of this before? Because I don't, naming comes down to even tracking your Git pushes when you're throwing together your portfolio. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, well, this is here, dot, 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 dot. It'd be much easier if I could have just referenced that as maybe a version. So once I did all of this, I really like to process while I maybe do artwork or I clean around the house or play with my cats. And ultimately, it has given me the basis for how I want to plug in my tokens next. And I want to talk about naming, because if you name on broken things, no matter what you're doing, if you're talking about UI, if you're talking about your relationship, it doesn't matter. It's going to break. It's going to break later. It's not going to scale for you. You're going to sell something faulty, or you might just be operating on a system that's going to fail one day and you do not expect it. So I'm going to break for, I don't know, hopefully like 5-10 minutes and come back and really get back to my core topics for the day, which is going to be hopefully around 8-ish. I even made a list. It was good. So basically, I gave us a little bit of context for setup, but where naming has broken things, that causes confusion, that causes failure in a lot of different realms. And hey, maybe you only care about this year. That's good, fine for you. I'm not for you. But if you want to build something, that's an issue. Naming builds trust, having the right conversation, being able to have transparent conversations, being able to say, I don't understand what this means very clearly without lots of chaos, because when you don't have trust, you have chaos, you have misalignment. And that leads me to naming, creating alignment within organizations, your relationships, your internal self, and in the software, because naming is directly related to what you can do with your interactions. If you want to have an innovation buster, then you need to have good interactions or a way for your user to get through their flow in an easy, simple way that makes your product viable. Then we will get into dissonance a little bit, because how do we get into proper naming? How do we decide on this? Well, that is really reliant on the trust that you create, because you have to be able to have a good, strong emotional foundation, especially in an organization, to have dissonance, to be able to feel it comfortably, call it out, and sort it out. Then maybe I'll spend a little bit of time talking about even naming in organizations that I've been in, Coupa, LlamaSoft. It's kind of neat. I started in design systems back when you used to, tokens are variables, but not. We can go on about that. But design systems, I started back when it was more variables, when we were back in Sketch, when we were still putting masks over circular objects in order, and then, putting it in this mask, and then putting it in here in the styles in order to make, a circular button, and everything was a CSS variable essentially. And seeing how that has progressed, into design tokens and design systems, and kind of understanding how what I experience, what I've seen, is an echo across enterprise, and really giving me an eye and ability to kind of see how naming can affect, companies in whatever industry long term, but also see how incoming trends, especially like AI, is going to have an effect on those organizations. So that will get us through really my process and the core end of it, where it's naming is about truth, and truth is, there's, my therapist will love me for this. There are, and we all know this, hopefully, there are fundamentally little T truths everywhere. We all have our little T truths, but there's only one big capital T truth, and none of us actually know it. And so what is truth? It's knowing that none of us know it, and, spending time in that chaos and in that dissonance, and sorting it out, doing it without fear. And what that gets you is, a way to look at something, and something that can actually work and not crumble down in unexpected ways in the future. So anyway, let's get to all of that in a little bit. And cool. I guess I don't know how to end things.